be a completely authentic payoff, but it needed to give the viewer satisfaction of staying that time to receive it, to get it. So and working with the actual the scientific results and making the scientific results have that. TV works in extremes a lot of the time. You need to do one extreme to sort of really give people that wow, it was great. And I think, and we'll find out from everyone who watched it, but it's like people will be grateful at the end if something has shifted and something has changed. And I feel like we did that. But tell me if you don't agree.
No, no, absolutely. I think Hershey, do you want to come in on that? And then we'll bring in Richard as well, who is still marveling at how beautiful his very own minerals gallery looks in the film. But Hershey, what do you think?
No, I totally agree because I think there's different layers to sort of the documentary and communication in it. But thinking about the results, being there on that evening, trying to figure out what has happened right in front of us was so difficult to capture because, of course, we're also dealing with the 100 people with the camera crew, etc. So, like from a scientific point of view, it does really help to take a step back, look at the data, and reflect on what really happened. So I think we did that afterwards. That's why we work on the graphics, as Helen was saying later.
Mm.
To actually come to a conclusion during that evening was way harder than I thought it would be.
Yeah, it was quite tricky, wasn't it? Because also I think the most interesting outcome was in the third question. So I believe that mining is more good than bad. Was that also 50% of people stayed where they had done the first time round, but then 25% and 25% did that, which was fascinating. But we couldn't really see that at the time, could we? That was only doing the analysis after the filming. And I think that finding was really exciting because it meant or indicated that we had been very neutral in terms of the information that we were sharing with everyone that I think was so
Mm.
important. Um,
Mm.
Richard, perhaps if we come to yourself for your thoughts, and then we'll go to Rashad. And Rashad, if you want to introduce yourself, because I think in terms of being able to stay neutral and not actively try to change people's opinions, that was one of the main requirements of the film, or kind of main things that was put on top of it. And that was something that was really learnt from Vector as a research project as a whole. But before we go to Rashad, let's stick with Richard and get any comments from yourself.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, look, it was an amazing thing to get involved in, and very much in line with that last comment there. The museum, the museum. If you look at our rationale, we want to see a future where people and the planet thrive, and that very much has always has to drive what we do. So, doing something like this where there was no lead as to whether this is good or bad to start with, but just giving people the necessary information to have a reality check and then make their own decisions about it is really important. And I think we were really keen as a museum to make sure that we were that sort of level playing field, if you like, a safe space for people to be able to voice what they thought. And that's very much what our institution's grounds are. You can't imagine how difficult some of the times the work that we do in the minerals world at the museum, convincing internally that what we're doing is actually beneficial for people and the planet. And so, winning hearts and minds here to actually get involved in some of these projects has been tricky. But people do get it, that someone has to tackle these issues. And I guess I was really proud that the museum was able to agree to do this kind of thing, which could have been problematic because, we work with companies that lots of people think are unsavory. But we know that they are providing things that are a necessity. So there's a big conflict in there. And that was great. And I thought the team handled it really well. And I think we didn't get any of the flack, negative or positive. We didn't have people saying, "Oh, you were so great, so pro mining, that was fantastic," or "Oh, you were, you voiced the anti-mine." We didn't get that, and we didn't get anybody really giving us a hard time. So I think we got it right.
Hopefully. I mean, it's been really interesting, the feedback we've had over the last year, and incredibly encouraging.
Mm.
Before we go to that feedback though, Rashad, would you like to introduce yourself? So Rashad was the lead for Vector, which was a multi-million euro slash pound funded research project that existed to bring together, and are you ready for it, folks? The geoscience, the social science, and the data science, to try and better understand. God, it's been a whole year since I did that, to better understand the world of raw materials. But Rashad, as the lead investigator for Vector, you were also there during the filming, and we'll hear from Sarah Gleason in a second as well. When it came to then the edit stage, that need to be able to tell this story in an unbiased fashion was so important.
Yeah, I totally agree. And those are the discussions that we had before and after the filming, how to deal with that. And my feeling is that people are shouting answers, but never agree on the questions. And I think that's something we should start first. Which are the questions that are relevant and important? And of course, you will have always people saying that mining is destructing the environment, which is true. And that we need the metals for the energy transition and to green energy, which is also true. So those are not the relevant questions. And I think what we need is to start a dialogue. And that is what I wanted in this movie, is that we focus on listening. First, asking questions that we agree on, and then listen to different views, and not trying to convince, but let people evolve with the questions to develop their own critical thinking. And that is something that was very important, and I think it was quite a success for the movie. And I'm very happy that we did something like that, and not, as Richard was saying, an advertisement campaign either for or against mining.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And Rashad, you almost sound like a social scientist saying that we come with solutions when actually we should be hunting for the question. That's brilliant. Sarah, what about thoughts from your end? Because I guess because you were off in the world of research, etc., when we did the filming, but then very involved again in comments on the edit, having led on a lot of the technical side, or the physical science side of Vector.
Yeah, so I guess, yes, I was leading the geoscience work package. So I was the one that really was dealing with the companies, the mining companies all the time in terms of enabling the geoscience parts of the project. Um, and I think this was a wonderful output, and I think getting the tone right was very important, because I could send the link to the documentary to the companies. And they all, the feedback's been overwhelmingly positive, because I think they struggle a little bit in getting some of the facts across without seeming like they're advocating for their own businesses. And I suppose that's a reasonable thing to do. Also, as an educator, the documentary is perfect for showing to students, undergraduate students and PhD students, again, to get some of the complexities across here, and just some of the concepts of how do we communicate facts without advocating for what we think is the correct answer. And in fact, it's up to people really have to make decisions, and they make decisions based on their own values. So I think it was a very interesting learning for me as a technical geoscientist about how to try and communicate facts without advocating. And that's the only way really we can allow these dialogues to continue.
Yeah, no, it's amazing, isn't it? I think we learned so much through this process, and what was really exciting was um within the documentary, a lot of the ideas behind the games came from research that we'd done within Vector. Actually, I don't know if you want to talk about the origins of the Hard Hats game, because that wasn't something that we invented purely for the documentary. It actually came from much deeper social science research that was done within Vector.
Yes, so as part of the social science package, different scientists were developing sort of communication strategies and how do you work out how to present those facts without convincing people, trying to put your own judgment there. And so Lucy Blennerhassett and Fergus McAuliffe developed a engagement activity, which is started as a board game, which was effectively a shopping experiment where people could purchase and had to build different technologies, and they used critical raw materials to make these purchases in that shopping experiment. And so that board game was later on developed into a digital activity based on the same ideas. And that was then translated into that hard hat game that's very suitable for the documentary.
Yeah. And then what we did, so we went from Lucy and Fergus's board game. We knew that the electronic version was coming. We filmed the documentary, and then on the web page for the documentary, Chris, if maybe I bring you in now, we made sure that there were instructions on if you want to run some of these games yourself, then this is how you can do it in a teaching environment. So it was almost stacking all those different options that people could engage with, really to say, well, how do you make this appropriate as possible for different people of different demographics, etc.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that was a critical part of our work in that kind of impact creation work package, which really is sort of external communication, but also trying to stitch all of those different research streams together. And the documentary, I think, really sums up, maybe as well of the nice synthesizing output to the project in really bringing together those different strands. It's quite an interesting piece of work to do in a research project because you're waiting, sorry, that sounds like you're waiting for the lovely research to come because that takes time and it takes time to go through all of the important quality checks and peer review processes so that you can show it off, giving it the full clout and steam that it deserves. And the documentary coming later on in the project really let us sing that. A really big success of that, I think, came into, as you said, stacking the different ways you can communicate the output, tailoring the game to different audiences, because one of the big outcomes of this, in my mind, and even it was touched on in the talk yesterday as well, is about communicating and tailoring to your audience. And I think that one of the successes from hearing from people on this call since the project or other partners involved is the impact piece of work from Vector have had since in that year-long trajectory, having been tailored or experienced things like this and almost honed our skills in how to re-communicate it to have that output and that impact after the project concluded. And I think that the documentary is not just pivotal as a vehicle for that, but also as a way that we all learn some new skills to make sure that we can keep taking that forwards in the future. And that was a really interesting learning experience to be a part of.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's really interesting, like hearing all of us talk about it now, because I think Sarah, Hershey, Richard, if we go back in time to the beginning of Vector, just even the language that we're using and things like that, we learned so much during this project. And I think what's been really interesting over the past year, so obviously Vector as a formal project finished in May. We had the closeouts, and when was it? Was it June, early July, something like that, when we actually finished it formally. Obviously, a lot of the scientific papers are still being published at the moment. From a documentary perspective, a lot of that impact is still happening right now. I have people coming up to me all over the world and randomly shaking my hand, which is weird, lovely, but quite weird. And also, I had the most amazing discussion with a lady from Brazil. This was at a conference in Portugal back in October. And her English was about as good as my Portuguese is, which is nothing to write home about. And we had this discussion that basically involved lots of drawing pictures, waving our arms and showing pictures on our phones, because she'd watched the documentary and we did translate it into various languages. She'd watched the documentary and she developed her own hard hat game, etc. And she was so excited. She wanted to show me what she'd been doing in Brazil. And I think that ripple effect is so exciting because people had those discussions around the world. But that impact started as soon as we actually started to show the documentary to people. And in fact, it really started when we filmed it, because those 100 people who were amazing. And when I asked them at the beginning of the documentary, do you know why you're here? And they all go, no. They're not lying. We didn't brief them to say anything. They really didn't know why they were actually there. And what was really lovely was about this time last year, we invited them to come for the pre-screening in the Natural History Museum. That was one of the most cringeworthy experiences of my life, because it's not every day that you stand up in front of like a cinema screen and you say, hi, watch my face for the next 30 minutes. But it was lovely. I don't know, Barney, if you want to comment on this. Quite a lot of the 100 volunteers came back to watch the film. And a lot of them told stories about how they left the filming and they told all their friends what it was they'd done, and like little snippets of what they had learnt during it. I don't know, Barney, if you want to comment on that.
Yeah, I think a lot of the people who attend these things are part of the casting groups, or they're part of, as I mentioned earlier, the expert groups or the clubs um, that we approach. So they've got an invest in or an interest in science, or as in or fact finding, or general sort of a thirst for knowledge. So I think quite a few of them on the night, as you can tell from those little interviews we did, the little interstitial box pops we did, is that they were learning gradually and slowly, and we didn't sort of give them too much too soon. And then it ended on a bigger question than it started with, and they went into their everyday lives, as I mentioned before as well, going seeing electric cars, seeing wind turbines, and knowing that you need gallium to make the blades rotate. And so it's those little things that tap into your your bones, as depending on what sort of character you are, or what conscious level you have. So it was a very I think a lot of people got a lot out of it. And it's you can't use the term life-changing experience, but you can say it's life altering or life shaping, or like it will change your trajectory and change your thought patterns. And I think that's what a lot of the sort of producer brains on this call might help them put in the hard work and do what we do, because you do end up um, changing people's the way they might live their lives by learning and being educated. So I think there was a general, and Holly, the AP who did all the casting, really got a great feedback. And people didn't want to leave. Did you
Yeah.
remember they were hanging around? It's like, you got to go. The doors are going to close, and they were still asking questions and still wanted to be on camera and do their
Yeah.
vox pops. So it was, yeah. I think they got a lot out of it. I think.
Yeah, it would have spoiled our carbon footprint if we'd had to pay for taxis for them all to get home, wouldn't it? Just because they were so engaged by the end
Yeah,
of the
no,
evening.
it was great. It was great. It was great to see. It really was.
Yeah. Hershey, what about yourself?
So, listening to this conversation, to me, the essence of communication is engagement. And I think we achieve that at so many levels that that is probably the key to its success. So we engage the people on the floor, as you said. It's very hard to get them on that tube on time. But we also all were heavily personally invested. I mean, the production team, Barney, ourselves. And so I think we were all engaged. We made it an engagement evening, and that then led to an engagement documentary, which has all the impacts that we just described and can see it on the chat as well. So to me, the essence of learning, it can only happen if you're really engaged with the subject. And I think that's what we achieved in this group of people.
You think we made them interested, Hershey?
Absolutely. And I think being interested is the only way to internalize information, right? To help you process it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Sarah Gleason, coming to you for some closing words. if we look back in time, I think from my perspective, it would have been amazing if we'd filmed the documentary earlier in the Vector project. I don't know if we would have ended up with the same product, but let's imagine we did. It would have been amazing to do this at the beginning and then use that as that calling card or that thing to be able to then really ramp up the impact.
Yeah, it's kind of going back to what Chris was saying. I mean, the project is a 3-year funded project, and then there's a sharp end to it. So, you make this wonderful thing towards at the end of the project. So you can't use it as a tool in the project. And in fact, the research in Vector was the one that, as Lucy's Green Deals game was really the one that led the way here. But it is a bit frustrating that we sort of we come to towards the end of the project, and through events like this that we can really start talking about the impact together. But unfortunately, this is just the way that the funding environment is set up. But I think it would have been wonderful, and I think if we were to do a Vector 2, really being able to use this as a springboard, as a communication tool, and also maybe to explain to people that we're not, as I said before, we're not advocating for an answer here, but we're doing research, and that is because I think this is a divisive topic, and there is a lot of emotion, and on all kinds of different levels, and on the topic of mining. So I think it would be really great if we'd had it earlier, but we needed to do the science to bring it to
Yeah.
fruition at the end. So it's a kind of a catch-22 situation.
It is indeed, is indeed. And Rashad, maybe final words from yourself, because I know that, I mean, certainly all of us have gone on and we've obviously carried on doing research in different areas and very much building on that learning from the documentary, from Vector. But yeah, any final comments from yourself, Rashad?
So from my side, I see that as a positive fact that it was, let's say, the crown on the project. Maybe it could have been better to have it at the beginning, but it was the effort, the concentrated effort of many people going in this direction, from the social science, we'll do it for you, the social science and the geosciences, coming together, and that it was, even for the scientists involved in Vector, it was not totally trivial. And it took us a couple of years to go through this process of being able to produce something like that. So I'm happy that it came, and I'm happy that it came at this time, and hopefully it will raise awareness and maybe the envy to the next generation to go to the next project in this direction.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Rashad. So yes, just to conclude with regards to today's little re-watch along, which I actually have to say, I think that was actually quite pleasant. Although there are cringeworthy moments where you can look at Richard, Hershey, and my faces when we're like, oh no, why did I say that on camera as well? And Barney sitting there giggling because he kept it in the edit, etc. But I think, I mean, this is something that we all learned a lot from. We produced something that we can certainly be proud of. People around the world have given us fantastic commentary. You just need to look at the YouTube comments just to see what people have been thinking. And yeah, we've won a couple of awards, so we get the little wreaths that we can stick on the front of our little thumbnail, which is pretty awesome. And yeah, it hasn't stopped there. So certainly from Helen and my perspective, so we filmed a piece in Portugal last year, so it's still an edit at the moment. And that was very much about the human story with regards to raw materials. So that will be released at some point in time. And we've got a whole load of other projects, haven't we, Helen, in the works as well. So all of which build on our learning from one night in the Natural History Museum with at least, what was it, 160 strangers, all of whom became friends. This is turning into the wrong type of TV program, isn't it, Barney? So with that, a massive thank you to everybody. If you've got questions, ideas, comments, please do feel free to go to the Vector website. So Chris still keeps a very close eye on all of that, along with a LinkedIn area. So please feel free to go to that. As you can see, the research is still being published. So Lucy, who's the person who invented the board game and then the electronic version, so she published one of her papers just last week, which is really exciting. And who knows, Sarah Gleason, you said it, Vector 2 could be in the future at some point in time. We need to follow up to the documentary that we need to work out what happens with that, do it right at the very beginning. So with that, thank you very much, everybody. That's the end of our watch along, and it gives you approximately an hour and 25 minutes to go and replenish yourselves before session, what are we session on to? Session 3 of the Responsible Raw Materials Conference, which will be kicked off by Michelle Cilliers at 3 o'clock UK time this afternoon. And we've got a range of researchers. So Dineo, who's a fabulous social scientist from South Africa. We've got Julia, or Professor Julia Sutcliffe, who's the Chief Scientific Advisor to the UK government with regards to raw materials. And we have a range of other fantastic individuals, including representatives from various NGOs as well. So please do feel free to come and join us or catch up on the videos online. It's been a fantastic session. Thank you very much, everyone, and we'll see you shortly.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Right.